Here we are again. Delightful to see you today, Brian. How are you?
Delightful to see you, sir. As I was just saying right before you hit the record button, it's delightful to see this scarf, this accoutrement you have on today. It's a
Yeah,
fantastic look. It is a thing of beauty to behold, sir. If you're
you know
listening
I
on the
love a good
audio,
scarf.
you should go look on YouTube. This is good.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, scarf game is. I've been working on a scarf game for a little bit, so it's nice to have around.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw some cool Japanese bandanas the other day. I'm
mm,
thinking about moving to a bandana guy. I think I might be able to pull off bandana guy.
Word up, word up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I every time I think about refreshing my wardrobe, and I really want to, I want to be like fresh to death out in the streets.
Hmm.
And I just don't. I just like find other things to do with the money. The money will always, there's always somewhere for the money to go. And I did just get like 35 pairs of underwear or something like that.
Oh,
So
nice,
like I can
nice.
live in comfort. You know what I mean?
Ladies, take note. Take note.
Yeah, uh-huh. Well, you keep that in your little memory banks over here.
Man's got choices. Like what you see is chosen. That's what you know from that statement.
100%.
What you see is a selected vintage for you personally. That's
Yeah, I like to live in comfort
yeah.
is what it is. And riding on I'm not good at shopping. That's the other thing.
Mm.
I go out to shop for clothes and I'm like, I hate everything about this. And,
I I love shopping. I hate shopping for clothes. I love shopping
mm,
generally. Hate shopping
mm,
for clothes. And I benefit entirely from the support and decisions of particularly Jesse Waters. Like, if you like my
yeah.
style, you should just talk to Jess and ask her for advice because that's where it goes from.
Uh-huh.
I actually have, like, I like fashion and I have really good taste and I'm able to like dress other people really well.
Hmm.
But when it comes to me, man, like I either get caught in like 13 different versions of myself and I end up in some kind of like outfit that looks like
Uh-huh.
Salvador
Patchwork.
Dali put it together on a bender, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
sure. Yeah,
yeah, as they should.
the fresh things are coming in 2025, and we'll see.
Hmm.
Maybe a new
Hmm.
wardrobe piece can happen. But speaking of new things that or like bringing fresh life to things, I actually have a question for you, and it is practical for my own life here, but I think that it might be helpful for the audience to hear as well. I have questions about um, magical Catholicism.
Oh, okay. Sure. Sure.
Because you and I have been here in the show for a little while, sort of like, bringing new life or sort of reinterrogating Judeo-Christian
Hmm.
theology and our
Yep.
relationship to it. And
Yep.
I think you and I are both in the like, maybe we don't need to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater kind of camp.
Agreed. Totally.
But there's a whole bunch of bathwater that we are ready to throw out. And so,
A lot of bathwater.
yeah, so I, for a long time, didn't know anything about Catholicism. Like what I knew about Catholicism as a child was, well, so as a child, I went to church and there were
Mm.
two kinds of churches. There were black churches and there were white churches. And I mostly went to black churches and sometimes we went to white churches. And that was what I knew about church and they were different. And then
Yep.
sometimes I would go like on a trip to the Catholic Church and be like, this is the whitest church. This is whiter than the white churches. And that's like basically everything I knew about Catholicism
Right. Right.
until recently. And then recently, I like got into magic and witchcraft and all this shit, and so I started being like, hey, 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 yeah, I'm getting ready to get into this witchcraft. And then showed up to the party, and all you motherfuckers was Catholic, and I was like, I don't, this is not where I thought this was gonna go.
It's
And
it's a
so
disturbing turn for everyone, I think, actually.
truly, truly, nobody looked comfortable with it, but and yet here we are.
Yet here we are. Yeah, yeah.
And so I started hanging out with the homies, and then people started. Somebody gave me a rosary. I was like, I'm gonna pray the rose. Okay, I guess I'll pray
Hmm.
the rosary. I thought this was gonna be cool, but okay, I guess we'll do some Marian practice for a little while, and everyone was like, "Oh no, no, don't worry about it." Right, indeed, there it is. There's the
You go
rosary,
ahead and we're talking
the
about it
one
now,
in
so you go
question.
ahead and put it on. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
may as well, right? So, so I started getting into that and started praying a rosary on a regular basis, and I started, and I got, I was pretty with it for a little bit,
Mm,
and like I made a little, I did my thing with it. I made a astrological talisman with one of them.
yep,
I
yep,
had
yep.
I had a nice Venus in Cancer conjunct the moon election that was going to happen during the nighttime, so I just like prayed the rosary all night and did a whole thing, and it was worked out real well. Um, but so I prayed that rosary for a little bit, and so the one that had been given to me had a little image of Fatima on it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so I had been praying to Fatima, and I noticed that I was just like I just never really got on board with the Marian thing. Like I just
Yeah,
couldn't. I felt really guilty about days that I didn't do it, and I just like fell off the practice, and I'd been like blaming my mom, like just I have a
it's fair.
troubled relationship with my
Why
mother,
not?
and so I started praying to this mother deity, and I was like, I feel weird. I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you know, and so I fell off the train. And then recently, I've been thinking about patronage to a patron saint.
Mm,
And so I've been, sort of like coming around to the idea, and still like all my wizard friends are Catholics. And so, or like whatever this is,
yeah,
not Catholic. But so
yeah.
so I've been thinking about patron saint practice and this kind of thing, and I've been thinking about returning to Mary. So as I did that, then I got on the old YouTube and checked
Hmm.
out. Well, actually, I went back and got back into RuneSoup for a little while. So I'd been out of RuneSoup,
Hmm.
and then was like, oh, there's a Saints course in RuneSoup. Maybe I should like go
Yep.
check that out because I took it a
Which is
while
a good
ago.
course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I took it a while ago and just didn't. I had no idea what was going on. You guys had all come from like white Catholic shit, and I showed up and was like not ready, and so it all just went over my head. And so I went back and was like, okay, so the European situation in 1300, cool.
Yeah,
Let's go. I was like ready for the history this time.
yeah, yeah.
But he mentioned the Fatima event
Hmm.
as an alien contact event, like
Yeah.
he as an alien landing, and I was like, "What actually am Our Lady of Fatima?" So I went to YouTube and found some Catholics who wanted to tell the story of Our Lady of Fatima, and I, whew, all right, so
It's a hell of a story.
it's World War I.
Yeah.
And there are three shepherd children, the youngest of whom is 6 years old, and a, a goddess appears to them, tells them to pray immediately, and if they don't pray, then the war will not stop. And then she bounces.
Yeah.
And then she comes back and she just like shows up on a monthly basis for a minute and tells them to do this and low key blames them for the continuation of the war. She like shows up and she's like, "Why aren't y'all praying?" And they're like, "Our Lady, Hail Mary, full of grace. My fault." Meanwhile, these children are 6 years old,
Yeah.
herding sheep, doing the very best that they can do. They are children. This war is not their fault.
No.
And then they so she only appears to the children for a while, and then they get everybody together, and some other stuff happens. These children get imprisoned for a minute, and they like don't make it back on the they're supposed to like show up every month on the 13th, and they don't
Yeah.
make it, and then Mary shows up in the prison cell talking about like, where y'all at? What I thought I told you to go to the, and they're like, we are currently locked up. What do you want? Miss Mary, what can I do? I'm 6 years old. I'm in a prison cell. What do you want from me? So the next month they go out and they bring the whole town with them, and then Mary shows up and she only talks to Lucia. She doesn't talk to anybody else, but she talks to Lucia for a little bit, who falls into a trance. And then Mary's like, listen, I'm going to make the people believe whether or not they believed before. And then she makes the sun fall out of the sky. And so the sun is careening toward the earth, and everyone is terrified because the sun is going to destroy the whole world. And then Mary puts the sun back and is like, maybe you should build a church and fucking pray some, huh? And bounces. And that's the end of the story as I understood it. So,
Yeah, it's pretty good.
so,
I don't think you missed much.
okay, cool, good. All right. That's, so anyway, I'm looking back at my reverence to Our Lady of Fatima, and I'm thinking that maybe some of the guilt that I had been feeling, some of the like, because when I was praying, then I was like, yeah, I like peace. I don't want there to be war. And I didn't realize that it was gonna. And there's something about the like consecration of Russia shows up
Yes.
also, and like I don't really want to involve myself in that at all. And so I'm looking back at that and I'm like, maybe Fatima's not the joint. And
Right.
so I've been thinking about maybe making a switch to Guadalupe because Guadalupe seems like she's down with the people. I could tell that story, don't necessarily need to right now. But so since you are OG with all this, can you help me to understand first what is going on? Did I get that right about Fatima?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then how do you understand a Marian practice? And from there, how do you like approach a saint's practice, patron saints, all this sort of stuff? For somebody who is like me, just a little, like I'm an internet vagrant.
Well, let me back up slightly to give some context, and then I'll jump right back to Fatima. So, I my religious upbringing and my religious training is in congregational churches, so in Protestant churches. And my dad's a Protestant minister. I have worked with offshoots of congregational churches my entire life. So, like, my connection to what you would call sort of traditional Roman Catholicism does not exist in a practice way. Although I did attend Roman Catholic Mass for 2 years in college because the priest and I were friends. Like, but I never joined, converted, none of that kind of stuff. Um, However, when I was a kid, I fell in love with um, both the contemporary Celtic Christian movement and then also the Celtic Christianity of history that existed in sort of like depending how you time it, you know, kind of peaking the 5th century, 7th century AD, and then also expanding into maybe ending somewhere in the 9th century. There's a Synod of Whitby in there somewhere, and I can't remember when that happens at any point at this point. But the church that basically becomes founded in Ireland and spreads out into Roman Britain, and is a part of that mix between Roman Britain and Ireland, and becomes part of the founding monasteries in Iona and spreads around from there. It's a different way of thinking about Catholicism than what becomes Roman Catholicism over time. It's where we get our ideas of purgatory. It's where a lot of ideas of penitence and how that works comes in. It's more community focused. It appears to have adopted a lot of traditional Celtic and Druidic religion into it. Um, Depending who you ask, there's lots of stories about the Druids basically being like, what if instead of Judaism we used our background and Jesus was added to that? And everybody's like, sure. And and so you get. But the thing about that
That's one of
shows
the
an
cool things
early.
about Catholicism, right? Is that like Catholicism it styles itself as the universal thing. Like it is good. It easily syncretizes with whatever local gods you have around.
yes, and I think that it's this weird byproduct. So when Western Catholicism says it's universal, it means it applies to everything. But what happens is when it hits localities, the local people are like, okay, yeah, yeah. So you say Saint Peter and I say this God name. Those are actually the same being. Let's put those together. Is that cool? And traditionally, the Catholic Church was kind of like, I mean, sure, right? Like this, you know, as long as you're showing up on Sunday, you're paying your tithes, you're saying Saint Peter and not this other guy's name. I don't care what you think in the back of your mind. So that's one reason there's this constant syncretization. Um, it so I came into the contemporary folk Catholic movement stuff through Rune Soup, through exposure, through magic, and I liked it because it does something for it solves a bunch of problems with European traditions, which is that because of the Enlightenment period, we get things broken apart in the separation between a more animist viewpoint that clearly existed and persisted longer in Ireland, for example, than a lot of other places. Um, and it's a way to sort of find your way back to the magic that the Catholic Church weird like sort of kept by covering things over. You know what I mean? Um, and that the Protestant groups entirely rejected. Um, there's some exceptions in Germany, the Arbitel, stuff like this, but and sort of the ceremonial magic route has some Protestant roots as well. But for all intents and purposes, you sort of have the Protestant Reformation that's like get rid of these idols, get rid of the smells and bells. You just need the Bible and some guy yelling at you to understand Christianity. You don't need this fancy stuff. And certainly, let's get rid of this lady who's showing up everywhere. She's a problem. Now, weirdly enough, this is a
By that
sort
you
of
mean
side.
Mary.
I do mean Mary. I mean,
Okay.
I mean the lady, star of the sea, goddess of all, she of the night, she of the sea, she of the earth, empress of hell. Um, you know, Big Mom. That lady.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
interestingly enough, the early Roman critics of first century Christianity do say that they're talking about Jesus's mom a lot. It's one of their criticisms. They're like, "Who's this random peasant dude, and why do I have to hear about his mom, all the time? That's stupid." So
Mhm.
clearly, her presence as a big deal was there from the beginning. But the figure of Mary. And so last little piece on the background. So as a medievalist, I learned a lot about this time period and about the Christianity that existed this time period. I really fell in love with a lot of the more mystical strands of Catholicism that way too. So combining it with like Gordon's teaching and Dr. Al and a couple Mallory Vaudois and a couple other like big people who moved through Jesse Hathaway Diaz talk a lot about the folk Catholic movement. It seemed a natural place to fall into. Mary in particular is what drew me to it because Mary and the Saints, because she's kind of amazingly uncontrollable by the church. They keep coming up with rules. Like the church did not like the rosary. The Catholic Church thought the rosary was trash and shouldn't be included, but it kept happening and happening and happening. And there's a great book called The Way of the Rose by Clark Strand, which actually cribs a lot from another book called The Bead Game or The Rose Bead Game, which by an author who actually happens to share my last name, Wilkins, but is, to my knowledge, not related to me. But those two books really do a good job of tracing the fact that this really was a goddess-centric practice that probably came out of India via Arabia and then enters into Europe with the bead traders. Um, and
Mm.
so people start picking it up and liking the rosary and doing the rosary. The church tries to outlaw it, and they can't. So then they co-opt it, right? And then they say it was their idea all along, which is their move, right? That's their thing. We can't stop people from worshiping Thor, so now he's the saint, So this is what they do.
Mhm.
So in a weird way, you can come to now this rich tradition. Oh, the other piece here is to remember that there is no separation in Europe from witchcraft and Christianity and Catholicism. And a lot of times in the 17th century and 16th century, when they're hunting down witches in Scotland and they're talking about, oh, they practice the old religion, they're actually talking about Catholicism, and in particular, this kind of folk Catholicism that blended the two. We do know that there are, for example, spells from the PGM, so from Egypt, classical Egypt, that are present in the grimoires of Scottish witches in the 17th century. Like they sort of made it all the way through.
Mm.
But they are touched and inflected with Christianity along the way. Even the PGM itself is from a period in which Christianity is inflecting things. There's sections in there where they're like, yeah, add Jesus to the mix here because Jesus is good at exorcisms, like
Mm.
so it's sitting with the trouble of the folk Catholicism is also admitting that these are blended and that you can't really just say, I only worship the horned God. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? We don't have that tradition preserved in any sort of written or clearly handed down format. The closest we can get is what's left inside these folk Catholic traditions, right?
Mm. Mhm.
Even Hellenistic reconstructionists, there's a lot we don't have about what the worship of Pan looked like. So if you really are trying to get back in touch with these spirits, they have played inside this tradition, and so it's easier if you play inside it.
Mm.
The other thing that's great about,
Okay, so before you hit your next point
yeah,
here, so you just said that an effective way to get in touch with older, more animist, more polytheist
yeah,
forms of being, most especially in the European tradition, does include the best way to do that, or a good way to do that, is by engaging with Catholicism. Is that what?
yes, and particularly this folk Catholicism tradition.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Now there are other places, some of the Eastern European stuff, you have really long-standing pagan traditions that existed into like the late 17th century. You could dive into that stuff if
Hmm.
you want to learn Slavic languages and
Sure.
do, you know what I mean? But if you can handle a little bit of Latin and a little bit of or English, frankly, at this point most of it's been translated, but like, a little French, little Latin,
Mhm.
English, one of the Celtic languages, or something like that, you can have access to quite a lot of material that's actionable, through
Gotcha.
this mission.
Okay. Hmm.
The other piece is that, you were saying Catholicism's about as white church as white church can get,
Hmm.
and it is, except it also isn't in the sense that, when I went to the shrine of Guadalupe in Mexico City, uh,
Hmm.
I was not in the majority. It was a
Sure.
lot of Mexicans at that spot, right? And so Catholicism, because of the spread of it around the world, has interfaced with so many different animist traditions. And
Hmm.
so, famously Haitian Vodun, has a lot, or New Orleans Voodoo has a lot of connections to Catholicism. So a lot of ATRs have connected to Catholicism in various parts of the world. Then you
What is
also
ATR?
have African traditional religion,
Mm.
or any of the diaspora African religions. So the religions that came with the slaves across the
Mm.
transatlantic slave trade, a lot of them merged with Catholicism in terms of a way to find cover or some legitimate synchronization. Like both
Hmm.
happened. Um, so it's very difficult, I think, as someone from a European culture background or white background to just jump straight into an animist tradition that you have largely your ancestors have largely been the sides of the colonial oppressors for. Um, and yes, you can go and learn from people. You can go and apprentice. People are often inviting you to do so. You know what I mean? You can do all that. But if you want to try to get some common language in a tradition that reflects what you've been taught your whole life, this is kind of a place to start where you can then be like, wait a minute, I understand a saint as mighty dead in this tradition. I can hear what you're saying, you know, how the saint represents in this other tradition. It kind of helps you talk in the middle a little bit. It's not, I'm not saying you get access to closed traditions. I'm not saying you shouldn't learn from people. I'm just saying that by doing this work inside your own culture you've been raised in and breaking it open there a little bit, it makes it easier to talk to people when you try to branch out from that point.
Mm, mhm.
Um,
So Catholicism marks a an easy entryway into wider metaphysics that
yeah.
can be more useful or beneficial than the closed churchianity that we are
Yes.
accustomed to in the United States.
Yes. I think that's a very good summary of that. Um, and and then so what are the key features of this? Is it obedience to the Pope? No, it's not.
Mm,
Is it a connection to the traditional church calendar? Sometimes, not even totally. There's a lot of fights about which saints are on the
mm,
calendar and which saints are legit, and this kind of stuff. Is it obedience to church doctrine? No, it doesn't have. What it ends up taking on is these features of categorization more than anything else, so that you can talk about angels and understand and work with angels. You could talk about, as a way of really talking about most strongly, though, the mighty dead and this long-standing European mighty dead worship tradition that gets incorporated into the saints. By the way, this is what churchianity fucking hates. Like
mm.
when I was a kid, you know, the idea of praying to a saint was idolatry. It was a sin.
Right. Hmm, hmm,
And in fact, according to the Christians I grew up with, Roman Catholics were not Christians.
hmm,
They were
hmm.
worshiping the devil and possibly the Antichrist, and they were engaged in a false Christianity that was not the true Christianity, and were all doomed to go to hell for it.
Hmm, hmm.
So it also felt kind of metal when I was like, now I'm praying the rosary. Um,
Sure.
Meanwhile, Catholics are like, what are you talking about? This is metal. This is the most standard ass thing you could possibly do.
Sure.
Um, so the veneration of saints, which is probably the more appropriate term than worship,
Okay.
um, because you worship is typically reserved for the divine. Veneration tends to imply a practice of devotion, but a little bit more back and forth. You know, and you can think about this too. You can think about how you would venerate a teacher you have had in your lifetime. You respect them. It might be the case where like you would feel comfortable quietly serving them tea while they talked. Do you know what I mean? Like that would make you feel good to be present while they were doing that, to sit in their presence like that. But if you say I worship my teacher, it would feel weird because
Mm,
they're still they're a similar being to you, but you're aspiring to be like them.
mm,
Saints
mhm,
work like that through the process of the afterlife. Like these are the mighty dead that we can aspire to be like and aspire to learn from. And they are humans who understand us. They're not the entire magnificence of the cosmos, kept in that way. And Mary is kind of an interesting bridge because she is both Saint Mary, but she is also Theotokos, the carrier of God, this sort of special being, and in many ways, like Jesus, a where Jesus is supposed to be in Catholic tradition, fully human and fully God, an incarnated God, basically. Mary is the human that carried that God into being, right? So in many ways, Mary is the highest a human could hope to achieve,
mm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
She's the most like God a human could do.
mhm.
I think she also tends to also become the point of the divine feminine being incarnated, right? And so there's this sense of like that she really is a goddess that is multifaceted and present.
Hmm.
But like the saints, she ends up having differences in locality. Now we're going to get back to Fatima. Um, so you have Our Lady of the Sea, Stella, or the Star of the Sea, Stella Maris, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Fatima. Like, why do we have all these different Our Ladies? Well, these are places where an apparition, an appearance of this figure has called herself this. Like, I've shown up, I've declared myself to be this Our Lady,
Mm-hmm.
and usually I've done it in this place. I've had a certain mission or statement or miracle that's done at that point in time. The way I think about it, and please feel free to attack us in the comments for all this, and as always, the way I think about it is there is one goddess that is Our Lady. I'll just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But but she is there's one jewel basically. That's Our Lady, but there are many facets on the jewel, or there is one beehive that is Our Lady, but there are many bees who make up the hive. There's something like that happening with her, as far as it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm.
So Fatima expresses an entirely different piece of Our Lady than Guadalupe does.
Mm-hmm.
And may even be, depending how you want to go with this, there is also this sort of like, if we think of Our Lady as a choir,
Hmm.
many spirits may have joined the choir over time. So famously, Guadalupe is connected to Tanatzin, the mother goddess of the Mexica people, whose sacred hill her apparition happened upon. And I will
Hmm.
tell you, being there, I believe you feel Tanatzin on the hill. Like
Hmm.
it felt to me much different than the interior Catholic shrine. They are connected, but there's something different happening, right?
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it makes sense to me that the combined figure that we call Guadalupe seems to take a special care for all the people of particularly Mexico, California, like that sort of Mexicana, sort of drift,
Mm-hmm.
because I think they're connected to her.
Mm-hmm.
She feels entirely different than Fatima, who's talking to somebody else about other things and different concerns and different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There are several Marys that I cannot get my head around.
Hmm.
Frankly, I share your weirdness with Fatima. I've never liked saying the
Hmm.
Fatima prayers that are
Hmm.
additions to
Mm-hmm.
the rosary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I find it uncomfortable. And I mean, maybe she was right. Maybe if those 6-year-old, maybe that was the linchpin to stop the war. 6-year-olds praying, and you got to bully them into doing it. But there's something here that, while, let me put it this way, my spirit does not lift into the place where I feel more powerful and I wish this person to be my patron when I hear the Fatima story. When I hear about
Hmm.
Guadalupe offering to take care of the people around her, bringing mercy and healing, trying to shelter the poor people who are being oppressed. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, okay, well, that's a spirit I want to get with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of the one of my favorites is, there's this tradition in Europe of what's called the Black Madonnas, which are these local statues and stuff that have turned black for various reasons. Sometimes it's candle smoke. Sometimes they were always black. It's kind of hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
There's a particular one, and then the term kind of gets tossed with a lot of images that may not even be black at this point in time, but are local, very active, sort of like goddesses, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
one called Mama Schiavona, Mother of Freedom, and her main patronage is of queer and trans people.
Hmm.
And her one of her big miracles is protecting a queer couple who were going to be stoned to death. She appears and
Hmm.
sort of like shoots lightning at fucking people, and they go off. There's a big festival for her every year where people parade. The queer community parades up to the mountain. This is in the Middle Ages. This is 14th century. right?
Sure. Hmm.
That's a spirit that I want to be aligned with.
Mm-hmm.
There are Black Madonnas who you carry their icon into battle and they shoot lightning from their eyes and kill your enemies. I definitely don't
Okay.
want to be her enemy, but I don't know if she's the one I'm going to be praying to. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
so it makes perfect sense to me that in your devotion to the larger Marian movement or the larger Marian energy, that was attractive. And then upon a particular expression of it, Fatima, you're like, this doesn't speak to me in the way that I was looking. This isn't what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware that I didn't know any of that. You know, somebody like
Yeah,
handed me a Fatima rosary and was like, go do it. I was like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, and it got me in the door. And then I didn't like it very much. But so then, you know, so like just like at a nuts and bolts kind of level,
Yeah.
like so you in order to do some Mary devotion, you like pray the rosary. Okay, cool. Is that like
Sure,
all that is done? Also, what about a patron saint or
sure.
you know, or other like I don't know how the shit works at all.
For Mary, I don't think you even need to pray the rosary. I think the rosary is a great way to do it. It's nicely organized. It kind of covers your bases. You can just Mary involves so much of sort of the mother goddess energy that if you're just out there praying to mom, like praying to your mother goddess, then you could see that as part of a Marian devotion. Specifically, the rosary is a specifically Marian devotion, so it's a good place to do it, right? If you want to make distinguishes.
Hmm.
There's lots of again, I would recommend the Clark Strand book, The Way of the Rose,
Okay.
and Perdita Strand. They work it together, Clark Strand and Perdita Strand. Um, and It has a very good outlay of like non-traditional approaches to this if you're not already Catholic, and lays out
Hmm.
the traditional rosary, the practice, what you need, all this kind of stuff. It's very good.
Sure. Word up. Yeah, because we do need the alternative stream because my YouTube
Yeah.
feed is full of white ass Catholic people now, and it's not what I meant to do. That's not what I meant to
No,
do.
no. And I will be completely honest about this. I think Christianity, as you said before, I do not think the entire Christianity should be thrown out. I think people throw out too much of it. I think there's a lot of good here. There's a lot of conversation about love and forgiveness and grace that I think are actually really important. I think there's a lot of the idea that if you are truly embodying love, the empire can break your body in public and it won't matter. Like they won't
Hmm.
be able to break you
Sure.
if you pull this
That's
down.
that's the Christ.
Yep, and that's fucking great. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's powerful.
Hmm. Hmm.
That being said, I think that monotheism and the expression of monotheism through Christianity is a nightmare mind virus, and that when Christianity is taken out of the context of a polytheistic approach, a multiple voices approach,
Hmm.
it stops being very useful. I make the comparison, I may have said it here, but I make the comparison a lot to having trained in Aikido. Aikido is a great martial art if you know several other martial arts.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not a
Hmm.
great martial art if it's your only martial art.
Sure.
Like, and I think Christianity functions in a similar way. If you are well stocked in a lot of other philosophical traditions and magical traditions, Christianity can add some cool stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think that's one reason that a lot of pagans, when encountering it in that form, were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, we'll put Christ next to Odin. That seems fine." You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Christians were always like, "No, no, no, you can't do that." And they're like, "I don't know why. He seems like he's chill. He seems fine. He's got a
Sure.
mom. I've got a mom. He was a baby. I was a baby. This is fine. It's fine." Um,
Right on.
so, but I do think that there's a lot of damage in monotheistic practice of Christianity. Um,
Hmm.
so one of the ways into a polytheistic approach is to sit with the idea of the saints. So you've been asking about a patron saint.
Hmm.
Saints have been assigned, there's a couple different terms that kind of get blended together here. So saints have been assigned various patronages based on their stories. by and large. So let me give an example. One of my favorites is Saint Nicholas, who most people would think of as Santa Claus these days, but he was
Hmm.
Saint Nicholas of Myra, a in modern day Turkey, um, and he was a saint who was known for a couple different miracles. There's lots of different versions of his miracles, um, and if people don't like mine, I will freely admit I'm telling you the way I like to tell them. There's, this is my
Sure.
version of the story. Um, but Nicholas, for example, there's a story of a man of Nicholas going to as a bishop going to a church and hearing the guy threatening the children. Nicholas loved the kids, and this guy's like scaring him with hellfire and brimstone. Nicholas
Hmm.
telling him to shut his mouth, and the guy saying, "I'm the priest," whatever. Nicholas wasn't in his bishop outfit at the time. Nicholas
Hmm.
putting on his bishop's ring, and the guy being like, "Oh shit, that's the bishop," and then Nicholas going and just cracking his jaw with the bishop's ring. Like, you don't get to scare kids in this church anymore, right?
Word.
Um, there's a very famous story of Nicholas resurrecting these boys who'd been murdered by the local butcher and pickled, and Nicholas resurrects them. Um, and then, yeah, saints are funky, man. Shit's funky. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then one of
Just
my favorites
imagining
that
the
I think is
process of taking pickled children and reassembling them.
the part I've never gotten from the story was like whether the pickling helped. You know what I mean? Like, did it make it easier to resurrect them? Because they're still kind of
Right.
preserved. It's not very clear to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh. Sure.
and then there's another one of Saint Nicholas, a guy in town refusing to pay his daughter's dowry, so they couldn't get married,
Hmm.
and refusing any gifts from the church in order that would help out with this.
Hmm.
And so, in something that is often enacted, Nicholas, depending on how you tell the story, but basically breaking into the girl's house by dropping stockings of gold, filled with gold down the chimney or through the window or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
where you see showing up in some of our current Santa Claus stuff. Why do
Sure.
we leave
Sure.
out shoes for St. Nicholas? Why do we leave out stockings? It's connected to these stories
Okay.
of him paying the dowry. That one also makes St. Nicholas the patron saint of thieves because he breaks into
Because it's.
houses,
Oh yeah. Sure. Uh-huh. Right. Uh-huh. Yeah.
right?
Right.
So,
Indeed.
so he's a
Oh,
patron
a
saint
lot
of
of conflict
children.
about that.
Yeah, so he's the patron of children. He's also the patron of thieves,
Right. Uh-huh.
right?
Sure. Okay.
I I'm
Free
gonna
Jolly
guess he
Jenkins.
also has an unmarried women in there someplace too. You know what I mean? In some traditions,
Sure.
but because he was helping out
Uh-huh.
with girls with the dowries.
Right. Right. Right.
So you'll also weirdly see often saints will be the patron of professions that take them on over time, and that can often be connected to their torture devices, the things that were used to kill them in life. Um,
Great. Yeah. Uh-huh.
like
Sure.
I'm pretty, I'm pretty sure, and again, I might be mixing some things up, but I'm pretty sure that Saint Lucy is the patron saint of like opticians or glasses makers, this kind of stuff, because she had her
Mhm.
eyes torn out. Like she's always pictured like holding a tray of with her own eyes.
Sure.
Um,
Right.
right.
Okay.
So the
Uh-huh.
patronages
Cares about eyes.
happen. So that kind of patronage that gets assigned through folk story and legend and stuff happens based around the story itself. This is a
Hmm.
person who has some concern with these issues, either through miracle or whatever.
Right. And so you notice that somebody, a mighty dead of some sort,
Hmm.
was invested in such and such a thing
Exactly.
because of their story or because they died in such a way that
Yeah. That
associated
they
them with
that they might
whatever
be a little
thing.
obsessed with it by trauma. Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And so you're like, oh, hey, you are associated with this thing, and it happens that I also need eyes.
Yeah.
And so, um, can I put
Can I
you
hit you up?
onto a candle and burn this candle and shout you out on every once in a while? Is that like how
Yeah,
this works?
that's part of it. So you can go to saints for their particular patronages. Another famous one is Saint Anthony for finding lost things. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people
Mm-hmm.
have heard the sort of Tony turnaround. Something's lost, it must be found,
Right.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing when you lose something. Which, by the way, I will just I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. That dude, I cannot recommend enough. He made a physical manifestation of a thing happen in my presence. Drove me
Mm.
insane. I It was a weird situation. My son's mom really wanted to make him a cake for his birthday. Lots of things had gone down that had made this difficult. This was very important to her. Her parents were coming over. Things were happening. She wants to
Mhm.
make this cake.
Mhm.
It's intense. She can't find the piece she needs for this KitchenAid thing
Mm.
to make.
Mhm.
And so she's sobbing, she's upset. Everything's happening. And
Mhm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, okay, I'll find it, you know.
Mhm.
So I look through the whole cabinet. I don't see shit.
Mhm.
She insists it's in this place, but she can't find it. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
I take out every single piece from this
Mhm.
pantry. Talking like
Mhm.
over 100 items. I take out every piece, look at it, is this it? Look at it, is this it? Takes me an hour.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I put it all back
Mhm.
because it's, what I mean? I'm just like, I'm not leaving it on the floor. So I
Sure.
looked at each thing I put on the shelves twice.
Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
It's
Uh-huh.
not there.
Yeah.
I go upstairs. I light a candle to St. Anthony.
Mhm.
I'm like, seriously, dude, I need your help.
Mhm.
Come back downstairs. I open the pantry. It's right on top of everything I just put in.
Word. Cool.
Now, people can think what they want about whether I missed it, I suddenly was
Yeah.
able to see it,
Sure.
whatever you want to say. That fucking thing physically manifested into
Sure.
being.
Sure.
I don't know how else to explain it, actually.
Yeah.
So it can get wild like that, but saints also care about the small things. They care about your life, care about human
Mm.
things, right?
Yeah. Oh, right, right, right. Yeah, because they are humans.
Yes, they're
Hmm.
humans, and
Hmm.
so they get you in a way that angels don't get you exactly. Like
Right.
it's it's not
Angels
human,
are, yeah, yeah, they're operating on a different sense of logic.
right? And so you can approach a saint based on their patronage or their common area of work. You can also
Hmm.
just approach a saint because you like them. So, for example, my middle name is Joseph. There's lots of Josephs in the family. Um, I did begin approaching Saint Joseph because he has a tradition as a worker. I needed help getting people jobs and looking out for stuff. I needed that, and so I approached him on that. He's also famously a father, so I approached him as a teacher about how to be a good father. So here's the actual thing. I came to him for work first, and then I was like, well, shit, this guy's also good at being a dad. I need help with being a dad, so I started trying to learn from him from that. And then I then I realized there's this long-standing Saint Joseph the Dreamer tradition from his story, and so like I have a little statue of him as the worker and a little statue of him as the dreamer.
Hmm.
I love to do dream magic, so I was like, okay, well that makes sense. And then over time, though, I go to Saint Joseph for all kinds of things because he's just my good teacher, and like yes, he's good at like
Hmm.
he's particularly a teacher in certain areas, but in the same way that like whenever you become friends with somebody, you know, they might be the person who helps you with math, but they can still help you move house because you know,
Hmm.
they'll just do it in
Hmm.
their way. So
Hmm.
like approaching Saint Joseph for a job is different than approaching Saint Michael for a job, but they both can get you a job, right? Like it's not no one's limited by their patronage. And in
Hmm.
fact, the Celtic tradition influenced this a lot because the Celtic gods we only think of them as gods of so and so because the Romans kind of divvied things up that way. Like
Hmm.
they were beings
Hmm.
who had
Hmm.
stories, and
Hmm.
how they help you is going to be different. But we can think of this even with like the planets too. Like I can go to Venus for a job. It's just
Sure.
Venus is going to find it Venus ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the saints do function like that as well. So if you have a name saint or something like that, or your grandma was always obsessed with this one saint and you got a statue around the house, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
You want to
Hmm.
start there. Perfectly reasonable. It's just what is your connection point
Hmm.
with these beings, these people?
Sure. And how does one build and maintain this kind of relationship?
The way I do it is through regular prayer, and meditation, and also light offerings. So water is always acceptable for saints. Water is a universal offering. Um, and in fact, it's probably the one that should be used most, um,
Hmm.
unless you get a specific other reason to work with it. Some saints have specific things connected to them, but water is not wrong for anyone. Lighting a candle. There's a lot of tradition of saints candles because lighting a candle to pray as a sign of your prayer
Hmm.
to the saint was a thing, and eventually people were like, "Well, why don't I just put a picture of the saint on the candle and dedicate the candle to the saint?"
Hmm.
And then I do that. So, and you can find those at every grocery store in America. Um, just drop into the Hispanic food aisle, and there's 13 different candles to saints.
Sure.
That's a great way of doing it. I personally like to have an image of the saint
Hmm.
as a focal point.
Hmm.
Um, this can just be printed off the internet. You know what I mean? Like drawn. It doesn't matter. But an image
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
saint with some of their key features on it because it's nice to distinguish them and think with the symbolism.
Hmm.
A prayer. There's lots of prayers to the saints. Some of them are hella Roman Catholic. Like they're like I'm not
Uh-huh.
saying that shit. I'm not saying it.
Sure.
I'm a queer dude in a polyamorous setup and a magician I'm writing books about Satan. I'm not saying this particular piece. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Uh-huh.
but I do think that it's worth thinking if you can how to jailbreak some of the Christian language and see what that means to you because that's also a long
Hmm.
time part of the syncretic tradition. Is like when I say sin, what do I mean by
Hmm.
sin?
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, so that's worth sitting with. But so lots of prayers available online. You can also write out a prayer to the saint, whatever feels great. If you write it out, I will
Hmm.
say the format is typically, "Hey Saint so and so, you, I'm addressing you on behalf of the universe and God and all that shit. Uh,
Oh, so like
you,
reach out above them. Uh-huh.
yep, just let them know you understand the connection.
Sure. Uh-huh.
I know you're really good at these kind of things, like story, like tell them their own story back to them a little bit.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then be like, because you're good at those things, can you help me out with this kind of thing? I'd
Hmm.
appreciate it.
Hmm.
And one of the things I like to do is I pray for the saints, with the saints, and to the saints. So
Hmm.
yeah, I pray for the merit of the saint because I think frankly and Marissa Gambaruti writes a lot about this, but like the idea of incorporating the Buddhist idea of merit is not totally devoid of stuff that's in the Western tradition too. There's some crossover,
Can
but just
you
the idea of like,
define that real quick?
yeah. So merit in the sense of like when your soul or virtue, when your soul does something good or that helps restore harmony,
Hmm.
this has an effect out in the world, right?
Okay.
And you can take those virtuous actions you do as a kind of like battery source for magic. And you can offer it to other people on their behalf. So I could pray that this saint have a good afterlife, that people hear for them, that I'm sending all my good wishes and intentions for the good of the saint, right? So I
Mm.
pray for them. I pray with them in that I invite them with me to pray for the good of other people, for the good of
Hmm.
circumstances. So they are also included in that meritorious act of virtuous prayer. And I pray to them by requesting that they themselves intercede
Hmm.
for the people in mind. So object veneration, prayer, then offering, light, candle or water, very traditional, both is fine. Incense sometimes. And like in my case, I have a long devotion to Saint Martha because of her role in keeping house, and I was primary caregiver for my son for a long time, and I need to learn how to do that.
Hmm.
And Martha particularly likes coffee, so Saint Martha
Hmm.
gets coffee on my altar.
Hmm.
Um, so you make a little space for them, and you visit with them, and then just you got to think of them as a friend or a teacher.
Hmm.
You need to spend time with them. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
divvy this up by days of the week so that I can kind of sit with everybody.
Hmm.
Um, just checking to see, did we freeze a little bit? No, we're good.
I'm okay.
Okay, cool. Cool. so I can spend time with everybody, but you can do it every day. But spend time visiting with the saint.
Hmm.
And I would say spend time listening because I have learned a lot about life from meditating in the presence of the saints. Ideas begin to populate in my mind that I did not have there previously,
Hmm.
and I sit with those and I learn. So, but that's really it for the devotions. I will say, if you ask for something, you get it. Acts of gratitude are good. That
Hmm.
maintains a good relationship.
Hmm.
For me, I think the best one, unless your saint has a specific kind of thing, is to donate uh, to charity in their name,
Hmm.
or if
Hmm.
they're a saint that has an existing charity. So, I have a devotion to Saint Jude. If Saint Jude does something amazing, I'll donate to Saint Jude's Children's Hospital. You
Sure. Hmm. Hmm.
know, so that's it. So but other than that, it really is just maintaining a relationship.
Hmm. Okay. Cool. Uh,
I will say
mhm.
you made a good distinction earlier from Gordon's course and from General, and we've been talking about it. Mighty Dead is a better way to think of this than approved list of saints from the Catholic Church, right?
Oh, sure. Hmm. Hmm.
So if there's somebody who feels like that in your life, who has this afterlife presence that has a
Hmm.
story that kind of goes beyond the grave and is a cultural figure of power and might,
Hmm. Hmm.
they can be approached in the same way as a saint. You know, um, if they don't have a tradition of doing miracles, you might have to kind of hope that's the case. But I think there's lots of figures where this is very true. They're
Hmm. Hmm.
they may not be on
Hmm.
the official list, but I pray to a dog Saint Gwynfort whenever babies are sick. So, and Gwynfort
Sure.
is not only not on the list, but explicitly taken off the list multiple times because people kept trying to put him back on there.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Right on. Well, a little
Church
bit
got
of
mad about people praying to dogs for some reason. I don't know why. Um,
sure.
but I figure,
Yeah.
yeah, if a dog can be an official saint, then or can be profitably treated in this tradition,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
people can
Okay.
be.
Right on. Yeah. Cool. So, um, okay. Yeah, I think that I understand pretty well. I'm thinking about, the idea of like asking for a particular thing and then measuring that that thing is done and,
Hmm.
making a particular offering of gratitude after that has been accomplished. Shout out to your boy Tony. I had
Yep.
I had heard that he was very good at finding things, and I had lost an important legal document, and was looking all over for it and couldn't find it. And somebody in the group chat was like, "Yo, check out Tony," and I was like, "Yo, Tony, help me out." And this motherfucker did not find my document. I didn't find the document. And then later, like 3 months later, I moved a piece of furniture and was like, oh, there it is. And and so Tony didn't get any wine that day. But
Right.
I
Right.
and so I don't know that I've ever been in a spot where I was like, oh, I need to offer a gratitude thing to a particular deity
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
like most of my magic has been either like sigils, which are kind of
Yep.
nebulous in their operation, or to planetary spheres, which are kind of like locked into the stone, and so then
Hmm.
and then I just kind of treat that as like a all right, so we're here now, and
Yeah.
like we're just gonna rock with this. And those are much more general also. I don't,
Hmm.
I've asked for like community or like these kinds of things, like it's hard to know when that has or has not, like I haven't, at no point was I in solitary confinement. So like, does that count as like having community? You know what I mean? Like, um, And these kinds of metrics are always like they trip me up a lot. So, for my part, I'm like thinking about patronizing patron. I always like want to say patronage, but then like saintronage, and so
Oh, nice.
I get twisted up this way. That's happened a bunch of times in the past couple of weeks since I've been talking about this. But I've been thinking about that, and I keep having these like kind of like broad notions of like success and freedom and these kinds of things, and like don't know how to. So I imagine that I would just like keep a homie around and be like, hey, you're really good at preaching and stardom.
Hmm.
You want to bring some preaching and stardom over here?
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
and
like,
I also think there are some saints that are very devoted to the idea of doing miracles, right? Like that's what they like to do.
mm, hmm
Um, so I have a devotion to a Guatemalan folk saint, San Simon,
hmm
and that is very much a while I have a much deeper relationship with him now that started as a sort of just transaction, not transactional, but miraculous back and forth.
hmm
Um, However, I think there is something really to be said for what happens if you start from the relationship point, right?
hmm hmm
Teach, you were good at preaching and stardom. Teach me about preaching and stardom, right?
Sure.
And one of the
hmm
other ways I didn't talk about, but is a very traditional part of the practice of this, is a deeply necromantic approach.
Yeah,
So
we should probably talk about necromancy a little bit, huh?
yeah, we're gonna have to
Good
talk about
thinking.
necromancy.
hmm
So calling up the dead and playing with their bones,
Ring.
doing all that kind of shit. Yeah, exactly. But the most necromantic thing you could probably do is read any books they wrote or listen to any music they made, or you know what I mean, where you're literally calling forth the speech and spirit of the dead
hmm
into your life.
hmm
And so, you know, people are like, I sat in front of a image of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, famous preacher, for forever and ever, and I didn't learn anything. And you're like, go fuck yourself, like, you know.
Say that one more time. There was a little freeze.
Oh,
And
I was probably came back when I was being vulgar. No, I was saying if you sit with Saint Bernard of Clairvaux and you're like at the altar every day looking at his picture and you're like, teach me about preaching, and you never read any of his sermons, like,
oh,
go fuck
sure.
yourself. Of course you didn't learn anything about preaching,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
right? And so if you want to learn about preaching from a saint, you're going to need to read everything. I mean, Saint Cyprian's famously this way. He's like, go read my books and go read all kind of magic books and like keep fucking reading books.
Mm.
Um, Guy comes with a bibliography, you know.
Sure.
So, but particularly I think in the case of these sort of folk saints, if they wrote something, you need to know their lives inside and out. You need to know them as you would any great teacher. Um, I often think that, famously Hunter S. Thompson taught himself to write novels by retyping Fitzgerald. They just taking a Fitzgerald novel, ripping it up, putting it next to his typewriter, and just literally physically typing out the pages.
Interesting. Okay.
And of course, he became a good writer. You know what I mean? Because I mean,
Sure.
if you just do it by rote, it's not going to do anything to you. But if you
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
engage with every sentence somebody wrote, you're going
Uh-huh.
to learn a lot.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
And so that to me would be a similar saint's practice.
All right. Cool. That I think is going to be easy for me. I think that's going to work. I think so. We'll maybe talk a little bit in the future about it. I haven't launched the thing yet, so I'm going to be a little bit
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cautious about saying names, but but that's interesting because that's one of the things that I've been thinking about in the as the year turned over. Then I've been wary of being an armchair magician, you know, about
Yep.
like, and so in my defense, I do think that I believe that magic is a real thing so strongly that I live my life as such.
Yep.
And so, and I do readings all the time and this kind of thing. And I do elections and I put stuff out under elections and stuff like that, just because I think that, like it's the same as like physical laws to me. Like I just expect that this is how this works. And so if I want the water to go in the cup, then I have to put the cup under where the water is going to be.
Yeah. Yep.
So I do those kinds of things, and but like I haven't gone hard on a magical campaign in a little while, and so I've been thinking about, but like my thing is when I wanted to be a monstrous bass player, then I made sure that no matter what happened every day, 365 days out of the year, I practiced for at least 10 minutes
Yep.
because no matter what happened, the instrument was in my hand. And sometimes I would make it through a little three songs, 10 minutes, and I would be like, fuck this. And I would like put the shit down. But many times I also turned that into 2 hours of practice or something like that, and I developed a
Yeah.
lot of love for the instrument this way. And I would do that before bed. So I would like go and like, have dream time about it afterward and
Hmm.
whatever. But most importantly, I had a little step that I could do on a regular basis.
Yes.
And it wasn't super targeted. I wasn't practicing for a show
No.
necessarily or like, I just like wanted to consistently do it. And that has been a strategy. That has been my primary strategy. Shout out to the daily forecast. You know what I mean? Like I just do a little bit at a time until I have like amassed enough momentum to make something magic happen. And
Yep.
so I've been thinking about how I can sort of reinvigorate my practice of enchantment without necessarily, like I don't want to do a fucking headless rite or some shit like this. You know what I mean? Like I want to, I want to like it, incorporate it into my life,
Yeah.
and maybe not tear my life apart in the way that a headless rite will do.
I think Saints practice is really good for this. So um, I'm not perfect on this practice, but I am very regular with what I'm about to describe,
Mhm.
and it takes me something. Sometimes there's different saints and stuff going on, so things will take longer. But basically, this never takes me more than 10 minutes. Right?
Mhm.
I greet the day.
Mhm.
I do, for me, what I do is I do a sort of celebration of the four directions. Literally, but we're not talking. I am not quoting. There's lots of great stuff out there for doing planetary prayers and doing all this kind of stuff. At this point,
Mhm.
this is what I do. I say, you know, welcome and blessings and hail, or some version of that, depending on my mood and how much coffee I've had, to the
Uh-huh.
powers of the east, the
Yep.
south, the west, and the north. Then
Right.
I say, that which is above is as is below, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so be it, right? So that's my whole circle work. I do that.
Uh-huh.
I light an incense stick that I have for a long time chosen to be the incense of the day. This is because I like to feel fancy. Does entirely irrelevant to what happens next, but I like it, so I do it.
Uh,
Um, and then I do, because so much of what I do is planetary related, from geomancy to everything else, that I honor
mhm.
the energies of every day. So I
Mhm.
start by saying, on a Monday, I'm doing a prayer to the moon. On Tuesday, I'm doing a prayer to
Mhm.
Mars.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
they are not. Sometimes they incorporate pieces of Orphic hymns or things this I've heard over the years.
Mhm.
Most of the time, they're just me talking about the quality of the thing.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm, mhm.
hail to you, Lady Moon, you shine so bright in all our dreams. Thank you for bringing us beauty and love and wonder into the world.
Right. You're a
That's
poet
it.
and preacher by nature anyway, so you know how to
Right.
go off the cuff pretty well with
Right.
that shit.
But there's lots of pre-written stuff if you like that, and I've used pre-written stuff in the past. But at this point, it's that. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm, hmm,
Usually, some request to offer good fortune to my household and
hmm,
turn away some bad fortune, that kind of thing.
hmm,
Then I
hmm,
do because I have a particular devotion to the angels of the day. So I say a quick thing. So say the planet, angel of the day.
hmm,
I have my names for the big seven. That is pretty much, hey angel so and so,
hmm.
do your thing. It's pretty much what it is.
Sure.
World's better when you do your thing because you do your thing. That's it. And then and then the last one is whatever saints, because sometimes there's multiple, or little god figures or whatever are connected, but like saints are little gods.
Hmm.
I acknowledge on that day as well, right?
Right,
So
because you've got a bunch of saints that you are devoted to, and so you've got a few that are reserved for each day of the week.
yes, and I sort of grouped them up
Uh-huh.
in there. There's lots of different ways to look at this, but typically on a Monday for me, I'll talk to Saint Bridget, for example,
Hmm, hmm,
um, and and then at the end of all that, I say thank you. You know what I mean? And
hmm,
and that's it. I do also do a little cup of coffee for the ancestors and tell them
hmm,
thank you.
hmm.
But that's it. And when I am more days
Oh,
than
so the
not,
coffee is for the ancestors. Nobody else gets coffee.
nobody else. Well, St. Martha does because she's got a special thing going on. But.
Right, right, right.
And there's a little bit of altar tending. Mostly for me, I do the incense unless I'm doing a particular request, in which case then we do the water. Some people like to
Hmm,
have water for the saints and everybody, just gets to
hmm,
be a
hmm.
lot. I don't have a lot of space.
Sure.
Um, but so I do that, do a little coffee for the ancestors, and that's
Hmm,
it. But like we're talking again, it's tops 10 minutes,
hmm,
and I have now prayed. I may have specific requests in this time period. I might be like, hey,
hmm.
make sure to look out for Zamboni. He's up to X today, and I know he's got his going on. So if you could put a little sweet word over there, that'd be great. Like just that kind of stuff. You just have a chat with these people, and like you say, there's a lot of power in wishing well and trying to do that and talking to these energies of the world and everything else every day.
Hmm,
And
hmm,
although I do also think, and this is to your point about like I live magically, there's a bit
hmm.
in St. Paul where he's like, pray without ceasing.
Sure.
And what does it mean to pray without ceasing? I think it means to live magically. I think it means to, as you go by a tree, be like, hey, tree, blessings on you. Nice to see you. You
Hmm,
look
hmm.
looking pretty leafy today. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but just treating all the beings and moving through your day. But in terms of like a dedicated practice, that's my most common dedicated practice.
Okay. Word up. That seems very approachable. And if I could get, I've been watching, uh, I've been watching some of the Rune Soup folks talking about doing a sigil a day also.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm not doing that, but
No.
I am, I am kicking myself about not doing it. So
Yep.
that's uh, less worthwhile than just doing it would be probably.
Well,
But
and you and I talked about this a little bit, and I have been since the new year, including some more of the geomantic figures into that pattern, and thinking with a
mm,
geomantic figure
hmm,
associated with the
hmm,
day and stuff. That, it's a little different than Sigil a Day, but there's something, but I'm trying to do something specific with that energy.
hmm.
And that has been good, has been really good.
Yeah, I mean, really, sigil a day is whatever it is, but more important is like the reason why sigils are great is because they are free and just fire another one. Like just
Yeah.
all it serves to enchant the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
everywhere you are,
Yep.
you can be doing magic. And so That I think is more the goal than achieving any particular. I don't even know what to ask for sometimes when it's
Yeah,
like when I'm like trying to achieve. Like all of my goals are like long term. You know what I mean?
yeah. I have this sometimes. I have this with divination sometimes, where people are like, what are you divining on?" You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, uh, not a lot sometimes for myself because I'm locked into a pattern for a couple years. Like mine's
Sure.
very tactical around what's happening with these. But people are like, "What's your long-term divination?" They're like, "Oh, I had a vision. I know what I need to do. I just gotta
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fucking work it." You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Some I had a friend recently, I was talking about my like career ambitions, and my friend was like, do you like want to take one of these like magic money courses or something
right.
like that? And I was like, really, I just need to like make this happen. I I need to launch the business more effectively. I know what I like. I need to revamp the website. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I could launch a magical campaign. I could like take a course on how to
Yep.
scale or whatever. But really, I need to make the website look better and develop and finish a product. Oh, speaking of which, maybe I should talk about a product that I've finished.
You
Um,
should.
Astrology from the Ground Up is available for purchase.
What? Amazing.
So yeah, the fundamentals course in astrology that I have been teaching, I've taught it twice and took both of them and merged them together so that each of the lectures is a compilation of all of the best things that I said in any one of them. And there is a workbook to go with it, and there is
Mm.
there's a little glimpse. I'm moving toward. So originally, my original idea here for teaching the fundamentals of astrology was that I was going to make it simple and easy for people who don't have astro literacy. And I still have that goal, but in order to make it toward that goal, I had to teach all of astrology. I didn't teach all of astrology. There's a whole bunch of shit. Astrology is wild. There's a bunch of shit I did not touch, but the like basic fundamentals of how to do a meaningful reading in a short period of time. I taught those fundamentals so that largely so that I could understand what needed to be done to boil it down to the easy, simple, doesn't require astro literacy version. And so that is still in the works, but there's a little teaser of that included in Astrology from the Ground Up. So that's all available on the front page of ZamboniFunk.com right now. So pretty proud to have that product that is available. So
It's impressive. It's also like it's good to have that stuff out there. It's good to get it built. It's also nice, by the way. I don't know if other people have a preference for live courses and stuff. I enjoy taking the edited, recorded courses a lot of times because you do get
mm,
the best of different set. You know what I mean? Like you
mhm.
get the best version of things. It's something I enjoy in a lot of formats. I will also just remind people because we are coming up upon the time of year when I do this that you can and should also get year ahead readings from Mr. Zamboni
That's true.
because it will make your year better. And this is again, we're approaching the time of year where I like to do it right around my birthday. So we'll be hitting that up soon. So
Word.
but you
Dig
can
it.
too. You can also face the year with confidence and joy rather, or at least wise resignation rather than
Preparation. The way that I think about it is a map. You know what I mean? Like if I
yeah.
can just, if I like, because the other day I was talking to somebody and she called me a psychic, and I was like, no, 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 I'm not psychic, and I'm so grateful that I am not psychic. I don't have other people's thoughts in my ears. I don't need that bullshit. No, I read a map. And when I read the map, then I can be like, okay, cool. So there's like, here's the shape of here. The hills are over there, and there's a valley in between them. And so we can guess that the river is in the middle of that valley there. And
Yeah.
so you can use that for yourself in whatever, like if you need to get to the other side, then you need to know that you need to cross a river, or maybe you can use the river to go downstream, or like whatever it is that you're trying to do. It's good to know the shape of things, and that is what I typically try to provide. I try to provide a useful map of the time period that we're talking about in context. And so I'm glad that you have found that helpful.
I have, and also in terms of like, I know there's some folks who do take the wise recognition resignation approach to astrology or stuff, but I'm a fucking magician. So what I do is
Sure.
I just because that's a hill doesn't mean you can't climb it. It just means you need to have some climbing gear, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so that is I also find that very useful. Like, I do tend to be like, what is the path of least resistance? Personally, like that's the kind of magic I like to do. I like the water course way kind of shit. I don't need to go over that hill unless I absolutely have to. But
Sure.
knowledge is, forewarned is forearmed is
Hmm.
very good here, and helps. I think to me that's how it helps make magic better. When is a good time to do this? When is a tougher time to do this?
Hmm.
It's always hard and tough in some ways, but if you know what's going on, you can balance it out and do some cool shit. So
For
um,
sure. And when are the cash and prizes available? Because there will be
exactly,
times when cash and prizes are available. And so,
yeah,
like maybe,
I do love me some cash and prizes.
right? Who doesn't love cash and prizes? Mm.
And if
The
you're
first time
looking to, and if you're, I'm going to pit myself for a second. If you're looking to find your fortune and things like that, geomancy's actually literally got technique for that. Where is my treasure buried?
where is
Um,
my treasure buried is a question that I could go to wilkinsbryan.com in order to get answered for me.
you totally can. And on top of that, like, also if you just literally like finding things, geomancy has a fun finding things system that I'm personally invested in, trying to figure
Mm,
out how this thing works.
hmm.
So if you're interested in a quick reading that doesn't necessarily involve a whole meeting with me, but you're just like, hey Brian, where can I find this thing? We've got options for that on the website too. Help yourself to let me know. And
Dope. We're talking about lost items. We're talking about
lost items.
lost animals, lost
Yep, lost
people.
animals, lost technically people. But that's gonna make me sad. Um, please
Sure.
don't make me
Yeah. Well,
sad.
that's welcome to
But yeah,
magic, sir.
yeah, exactly. But lost things, lost places, lost thoughts, lost ideas, lost things. We can find them all. So.
Lost connections, perhaps.
Yes, it's just a big lost connections article, actually. It's just, where is the person I saw on the bus on 13th Street? Yeah.
Ooh, she was so fine.
Uh, yeah. We'll see. You know what? If you got one of those, I will look it up as long as you're not going to be creepy about it. Just promise. You have to promise me no
Good
creepiness.
luck with that, sir. If you're going to a wizard being like, "Yo, where's the lady that from the bus?"
That's
Like,
true. That is probably a disqualifying event. Never mind. I'm not doing that one.
yeah, the love magic, man. It's so dicey. You start getting into love magic, and then it's just like
Self-use only. Self-use only.
even that, even that is like I
Get you into trouble.
oh I didn't mean for I didn't mean for all that. I just I just wanted to text back. That's what it was. Anyway, this has been a delightful time. We actually forgot to do the reading of the
Oh
week
shit.
this week, so and I
Okay.
forgot to prepare you for it. So maybe we'll hit that. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. Maybe
Sometime
I'll
we'll hit it. We'll sometime. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I don't want to leave anybody hanging, but I think we've wrapped this up in a lovely place,
Yeah.
and I've had a real nice time. So thank you so much for
Oh,
being here,
same. Always a
Brian.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here, beautiful people who have listened to us ramble on for this much time. I am so delighted every time you all do that. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to check out wilkinsbryan.com. Don't forget to go get your merch and your artwork and all that at zamboyfunk.com. Beautiful people, thank you so much for being here. Peace and blessings unto the item. Rastafari. Check you out next time.